Apocrypha are works, usually written works, that are of unknown authorship, or of doubtful authenticity, or spurious, or not considered to be within a particular canon. The word is properly treated as a plural, but in common usage is often singular. In the context of the Jewish and Christian Bibles, where most texts are of unknown authorship, Apocrypha usually refers to a set of texts included in the Septuagint but not in the Hebrew Bible. The word's origin is the medieval Latin adjective apocryphis, secret, or non-canonical, from the Greek adjective pi-o-micron kappa rho upsilon phi-o-micron sigma, obscure, from the verb pi-o-micron kappa rho upsilon pi tau epsilon iota nu, to hide away. Introduction. Apocrypha is commonly applied in Christian religious contexts involving certain disagreements about biblical canonicity. Apocryphal writings are a class of documents rejected by some as being worthy to properly be called scripture, though, as with other writings, they may sometimes be referenced for support. While writings that are now accepted by Christians as scripture were recognized as being such by various believers early on, the establishment of a largely settled uniform canon was a process of centuries, and what the term canon precisely meant also saw development. The canonical process took place with believers recognizing writings as being of God, subsequently being followed official affirmation of what had become largely established. The Roman Catholic Church provided its first dogmatic definition of her entire canon in 1546, which put a stop to doubts and disagreements about the status of the Apocrypha, as well as certain other books, which had continued from the beginning of the anti-church. The leader of the Protestant Reformation, Martin Luther, like the Catholic Church Father Jerome, favored the Masoretic canon for the Old Testament, excluding apocryphal books in his non-binding canon as being worthy to properly be called scripture, but included most of them in a separate section. As per Jerome, explaining the Eastern Orthodox Church's canon is made difficult because of differences of perspective with the Roman Catholic Church in the interpretation of how it was done. Today Orthodox accept a few more books than appear in the Catholic canon. Examples: Esoteric writings and objects. The word apocryphal was first applied to writings which were kept secret because they were the vehicles of esoteric knowledge considered too profound or too sacred to be disclosed to anyone other than the initiated. For example, the disciples of the Gnostic Prodicus boasted that they possessed the secret books of Zoroaster. The term in general enjoyed high consideration among the Gnostics. Renowned sinologist Anna Seidel refers to texts and even items produced by ancient Chinese sages as apocryphal and studied their uses during 6 dynasties China. These artifacts were used as symbols legitimizing and guaranteeing the emperor's heavenly mandate. Examples of these include talismans, charts, writs, tallies, and registers. The first examples were stones, jade pieces, bronze vessels and weapons, but came to include talismans and magic diagrams. From their roots in Zhou-era China, these items came to be surpassed in value by texts by the Han Dynasty. Most of these texts have been destroyed as emperors, particularly during the Han Dynasty, collected these legitimizing objects and prescribed, forbade and burnt nearly all of them to prevent them from falling into the hands of political rivals. It is therefore fitting with the Greek root of the word, as these texts were obviously hidden away to protect the ruling emperor from challenges to his status as heaven's choice as sovereign. Writings of questionable value, apocrypha, was also applied to writings that were hidden not because of their divinity but because of their questionable value to the Church. Many in Protestant tradition cite Revelation chapter 22 verses 18 to 19 as a potential curse for those who attach any canonical authority to extra-biblical writings, such as the Apocrypha. However, a strict explanation of this text would indicate it was meant for only the Book of Revelation. RV 22:18-19 f. states, "For I testify unto every man that heareth the words of the prophecy of this book, if any man shall add unto these things, God shall add unto him the plagues that are written in this book. And if any man shall take away from the words of the book of this prophecy, God shall take away his part out of the book of life, and out of the holy city, and from the things which are written in this book. In this case, if one holds to a strict hermeneutic, the words of the prophecy do not refer to the Bible as a whole but to Jesus. A revelation to John. Origen, in Commentaries on Matthew, distinguishes between writings which were read by the churches and apocryphal writings. Gamma rho alpha phi mu phi epsilon rho omicron mu epsilon nu eta mu epsilon mu nu tau omicron sigma kappa omicron iota nu omicron sigma kappa alpha delta epsilon delta eta mu omicron sigma iota epsilon upsilon mu epsilon nu omicron iota sigma beta iota beta lambda iota omicron iota sigma epsilon kappa sigma delta tau iota nu pi omicron kappa rho upsilon phi omicron iota sigma phi epsilon rho omicron mu epsilon mu eta. The meaning of alpha pi omicron kappa rho upsilon phi omicron sigma is here practically equivalent to excluded from the public use of the Church, and prepares the way for an even less favorable use of the word. Spurious writings in general use. The word Apocrypha came to mean false, spurious, bad, or heretical. This meaning also appears in Origen's prologue to his commentary on the Song of Songs, of which only the Latin translation survives. The scripture is his Quae appellantur Apocryphae. Pro eo quod multa indiis corruptere contra fidem veram inveni intera majoribus tradita non placuit iis dari locumeni si admitti ad auctoritatem. Concerning these scriptures, which are called apocryphal, for the reason that many things are found in them corrupt and against the true faith handed down by the elders, it has pleased them that they not be given a place nor be admitted to authority. Other uses of Apocrypha developed over the history of Western Christianity. The Gelasian decree refers to religious works by Church Fathers Eusebius, Tertullian and Clement of Alexandria as Apocrypha. Augustine defined the word as meaning simply obscurity of origin, implying that any book of unknown authorship or questionable authenticity would be considered apocryphal. On the other hand, Jerome declared that all books outside the Hebrew canon were apocryphal. In practice, Jerome treated some books outside the Hebrew canon as if they were canonical, and the Western Church did not accept Jerome's definition of apocrypha, instead retaining the word's prior meaning. As a result, various church authorities labeled different books as apocrypha, treating them with varying levels of regard. Origen, Clement and others cited some apocryphal books as scripture, divine scripture, inspired, and the like. On the other hand, teachers connected with Palestine and familiar with the Hebrew canon excluded from the canon all of the Old Testament not found there. This view is reflected in the canon of Melito of Sardis, and in the prefaces and letters of Jerome. A third view was that the books were not as valuable as the canonical scriptures of the Hebrew collection, but were of value for moral uses, as introductory texts for new converts from paganism, and to be read in congregations. They were referred to as ecclesiastical works by Rufinus. These three opinions regarding the apocryphal books prevailed until the Protestant Reformation, when the idea of what constitutes canon became a matter of primary concern for Roman Catholics and Protestants alike. In 1546, the Catholic Council of Trent reconfirmed the canon of Augustine, dating to the 2nd and 3rd centuries, declaring, "He is also to be anathema who does not receive these entire books, with all their parts, as they have been accustomed to be read in the Catholic Church, and are found in the ancient editions of the Latin Vulgate, as sacred and canonical. The whole of the books in question, with the exception of 1 Est Ras and 2 Est Ras and the Prayer of Manasseh, were declared canonical at Trent." The Protestants, in comparison, were diverse in their opinion of the Deuterocanon early on. Some considered them divinely inspired, others rejected them. Anglicans took a position between the Catholic Church and the Protestant churches. They kept them as Christian intertestamental readings and a part of the Bible, but no doctrine should be based on them. John Wycliffe, a 14th-century Christian humanist, had declared in his biblical translation that whatever book is in the Old Testament besides these 25 shall be set among the Apocrypha, that is, without authority or belief. Nevertheless, his translation of the Bible included the Apocrypha and the Epistle of the Laodiceans. Martin Luther did not class apocryphal books as being scripture, but in both the German and English translations of the Bible, the Apocrypha are published in a separate section from the other books, although the Lutheran and Anglican lists are different. In some editions, readers were warned that these books were not to be any otherwise approved or made use of than other human writings. A milder distinction was expressed elsewhere, such as in their argument introducing them in the Geneva Bible, and in the 6th article of the Church of England, where it is said that the other books the Church doth read for example of life and instruction of manners, though not to establish doctrine. Among some other Protestants, the term apocryphal began to take on extra or altered connotations, not just of dubious authenticity, but having spurious or false content. Not just obscure but having hidden or suspect motives. Protestants were not unanimous in adopting those meanings. The Church of England agreed, and that view continues today throughout the Lutheran Church, the Worldwide Anglican Communion, and many other denominations. Whichever implied meaning is intended, Apocrypha was used primarily by Protestants, in reference to the books of questioned canonicity. Catholics and Orthodox sometimes avoid using the term in contexts where it might be disputatious or be misconstrued as yielding on the point of canonicity. Thus, the respect accorded to apocryphal books varied between Protestant denominations. Most Protestant published Bibles that include the apocryphal books will relocate them into a separate section, so as not to intermingle them with their canonical books, according to the Orthodox Anglican Church. On the other hand, the Anglican Communion emphatically maintains that the Apocrypha is part of the Bible and is to be read with respect by her members. Two of the hymns used in the American Prayer Book Office of Morning Prayer, the Benedictus es and Benedicite, are taken from the Apocrypha. One of the offertory sentences in Holy Communion comes from an apocryphal book. Lessons from the Apocrypha are regularly appointed to be read in the daily, Sunday, and special services of morning and evening prayer. There are altogether 111 such lessons in the latest Revised American Prayer Book Lectionary. The books used are 2 Esdras, Tobit Wisdom, Ecclesiasticus Baruch, 3 Holy Children, and I Maccabees. The position of the Church is best summarized in the words of Article 6 of the 39 Articles. In the name of Holy Scripture we do understand those canonical books of the Old and New Testament, of whose authority there was never any doubt in the Church, and the other books the Church doth read for example of life and instruction of manners, but yet doth it not apply them to establish any doctrine. With few exceptions, the 66-book Protestantism canon has been well established for centuries, and with many today contending against the Apocrypha using various arguments. Metaphorical usage. The adjective apocryphal is commonly used in modern English to refer to any text or story considered to be of dubious veracity or authority, although it may contain some moral truth. In this broader metaphorical sense, the word suggests a claim that is in the nature of folklore, factoid or urban legend.